There was a moment that changed everything. I was standing in my mailbox holding an envelope that had been delivered to the wrong address. At first, I thought it was just another bill. But when I saw the name printed on the document, my blood ran cold. Because after paying my sister $3,200 every month for 2 years, I discovered that she had been hiding something from me the entire time. And the truth? It changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Hello, everyone. Before I tell you my story, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy emotional family dramas, betrayal stories, and shocking endings. My name is Sophia Carter. I'm 31 years old. And this is the story of how the person I trusted most almost destroyed my future. Growing up, my sister Melissa was everything to me. She was 4 years older, smarter, more confident, and after our parents passed away 3 years ago, she became the only family I had left. Losing mom and dad within 18 months of each other nearly broke me. I honestly don't know how I survived that period, but Melissa helped me through it, or at least, that's what I believed. At the time, I was still recovering emotionally. I wasn't thinking about property, money, or inheritance. I just missed my parents. One evening, Melissa invited me to dinner. After dessert, she sat across from me with a serious expression. "Sophia, we need to discuss practical things." I nodded. She continued. "Mom and Dad left the house to me. I remember feeling surprised. Not angry, just surprised, because our parents had always treated us equally. But grief does strange things, and honestly, I didn't have the energy to argue." Melissa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Don't worry, you can stay here as long as you want." I smiled with relief. Until she added, "But you'll need to contribute $3,200 a month." I blinked. $3,200, she nodded. "It's still cheaper than renting somewhere else." Then she sighed dramatically. "And honestly, Sophia, you've never been good with money. You'll probably never own property anyway." Those words hurt. But I assumed she was trying to help. After all, she was my big sister. Who was I to question her? So I agreed. Month after month, year after year, I transferred exactly $3,200 into Melissa's account. Never late, never missed. I paid half the utilities, bought groceries, cleaned the house, and constantly thanked her for letting me stay. Meanwhile, Melissa's lifestyle started changing. At first, I didn't notice. New designer handbags, luxury vacations, expensive jewelry, a brand new SUV. Whenever I asked how she afforded everything, she laughed. I invest wisely, and I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? She was family. Over time, however, something strange started bothering me. Whenever I mentioned buying my own condo someday, Melissa immediately shut down the conversation. "Don't waste your money. Homes are too expensive. You'll never qualify. You should just stay here." At first, I thought she was being protective, but eventually, her words started sounding less like advice and more like control. Then one night during dinner, I mentioned that a coworker had purchased her first home. Melissa actually rolled her eyes. "Not everyone is lucky." Then she looked directly at me. "Be realistic, Sophia. You'll never own property," those exact words. "You'll never own property." I laughed awkwardly, but inside, something felt wrong, because my parents had spent their entire lives teaching us independence. Why would Melissa want me dependent on her forever? Still, I ignored the feeling until one Saturday morning. I was getting the mail when I noticed a thick envelope addressed to Melissa. Normally, I would have placed it on the kitchen counter without even looking. But something caught my attention. Across the front were the words, "Property Tax Assessment Notice." I froze. Property tax notice? Why would that matter? She owned the house. Didn't she? I carried the envelope inside. But before I reached the kitchen, Melissa rushed toward me, almost panicked. She snatched the envelope from my hands so quickly that I nearly dropped my coffee. "I'll take that." I stared at her. "Everything okay?" Her smile looked forced. "Of course." Then she immediately walked away. And for the first time in my life, I felt suspicious of my own sister. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about her reaction bothered me. Why panic over a tax document? The next morning, I tried convincing myself I was overthinking. But then another memory surfaced. 6 months earlier, I had accidentally opened a different envelope. Melissa had reacted the exact same way, almost frightened. At the time, I ignored it. Now, I couldn't stop thinking about it. A few days later, I met my friend Emma for coffee. As we talked, I casually mentioned my monthly rent. Emma nearly choked on her drink. 3,200? I laughed. Welcome to California. But Emma looked confused. Wait, how big is the house? 3 bedrooms. She stared at me. Sophia, my mortgage is less than that. I laughed. But she didn't. Then she asked a question I wasn't prepared for. Have you ever seen the will? I froze. No. Have you ever seen the deed? No. Have you ever spoken with your parents' attorney? Again. No. Emma slowly placed her coffee cup down. Sophia, what if you've been trusting the wrong person? I immediately defended Melissa. She's my sister, Emma nodded. And people have betrayed family members for far less than money. I hated hearing that, because I didn't want to believe it. But deep down, a tiny voice inside me had started asking questions. Questions I had ignored for 2 years. That evening, I came home earlier than usual. Melissa wasn't there. As I entered the kitchen, I noticed several documents spread across the dining table. Apparently, she had left in a hurry. I wasn't trying to snoop. I really wasn't. But then I saw something that made my entire body freeze. Because printed at the top of one document was my name. Sophia Carter. And underneath my name were 4 words that changed my life forever. Beneficiary. 50% owner. I couldn't breathe. Because according to the document in front of me, my parents' house belonged to both of us. Not just Melissa. And suddenly, everything started making terrifying sense. For several seconds, I just stood there staring at the paper. My name, my address, and the words, beneficiary, 50% owner. I honestly thought I was hallucinating. Because, according to Melissa, Mom and Dad had left the entire house to her. That was the story I had believed for 2 years. The story I had built my life around. The story that had cost me $3,200 every month. Slowly, I picked up the document. My hands were shaking. But before I could read anything else, I heard the garage door opening. Melissa was home. Panic hit me immediately. I quickly placed everything back exactly as I had found it and rushed upstairs. A few seconds later, she entered the kitchen. Hey, Soph, I forced a smile. Hey, but for the first time in my life. I looked at my sister differently. Not with love, not with trust, but with questions. And somehow, that hurt more than anything. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying everything in my mind. The expensive vacations, the luxury bags, the new SUV, the constant reminders that I'd never own property. And suddenly, I started wondering something terrifying. What if my rent money had been paying for her lifestyle? The thought made me feel sick, but I still didn't want to believe it. Because Melissa wasn't just my sister. She had practically raised me after our parents died. She comforted me, supported me, protected me, or at least, that's what I thought. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Then I did something I should have done 2 years earlier. I called my parents' attorney, Mr. Anderson. He sounded surprised to hear from me. Sophia? My goodness, how are you? I smiled sadly. I've been better. There was kindness in his voice. I miss your parents every day. So do I. After a few minutes of conversation, I carefully asked, Mr. Anderson, can I ask you something about Mom and Dad's estate? There was silence. Then he answered, Of course. I swallowed hard. Did they really leave the house entirely to Melissa? The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, he spoke. Sophia, who told you that? My heart stopped. Melissa. Another long pause. Then Mr. Anderson sighed heavily. No, absolutely not. I felt my knees weaken. What? He sounded genuinely shocked. The house was divided equally. 50% to Melissa. 50% to you. Tears immediately filled my eyes, because hearing those words confirmed my worst fear. For 2 years, my own sister had lied to me, But I still wasn't prepared for what came next. Mr. Anderson continued. In fact, your mother specifically instructed me to explain everything to both daughters together. I froze together, yes. The meeting was scheduled 2 weeks after your father's funeral. My breathing stopped. Because I remembered that day. Melissa had told me the lawyer canceled. She said he had sent everything by email. And because I was drowning in grief, I never questioned her. Mr. Anderson sounded confused. Sophia, you never attended the meeting. No, Melissa said you were too overwhelmed. Too overwhelmed. The excuse she had used to steal 2 years of my life. At that moment, I started crying. Not because of money, not because of the house, because I realized something heartbreaking. While I was grieving our parents, Melissa had been planning. After hanging up, I sat inside my car for nearly an hour. I couldn't stop crying. Memories flooded my mind. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, sleepovers. The sister who protected me from bullies. The sister who held my hand when I was scared. Where had she gone? Or maybe this was who she had always been. I just never wanted to see it. Then my phone rang. Emma. As soon as she heard my voice, she knew. Sophia? I burst into tears. And after listening quietly for several minutes, she said, Come over. When I arrived, she hugged me immediately. Then she made coffee. Because somehow, good friends always know that coffee helps. After hearing everything, Emma looked furious. She stole from you. I shook my head. She's my sister. Emma nodded. And that's what makes it worse. Then she asked, Do you have proof of all the payments? I blinked. Yes. Every transfer. Emma smiled. Good. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about evidence. For the next 3 hours, we organized everything. Bank statements, payment receipts, text messages, emails. And the more we uncovered, the worse things became. Over 24 months, I had paid Melissa nearly $76,800. I nearly became sick. That money represented overtime shifts, sacrifices, dreams. And suddenly I remembered something. 3 months earlier, Melissa had returned from Greece. She had posted photos from luxury hotels. At the time, she claimed she had received a work bonus. Now, I wasn't so sure. Then Emma discovered something shocking. One text message from Melissa read, As long as you stay here, you'll never have to worry about buying property. At the time, I thought she was being supportive. Now I understood the truth. She never wanted me to leave, because leaving meant losing her income, and suddenly, everything made sense. But the biggest shock came 2 days later. Mr. Anderson invited me to his office. When I arrived, he handed me a copy of my mother's handwritten letter. Apparently, Mom had left personal letters for both daughters. I had never received mine, because Melissa had kept it. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope, and as soon as I recognized Mom's handwriting, I broke down completely. The first sentence destroyed me. My precious Sophia, if you're reading this, then Melissa is sitting beside you. She wasn't. She had never been there. I continued reading through tears. This house belongs equally to both of you. Take care of each other. Family is worth more than money. I couldn't even finish the letter, because my mother had trusted us, and Melissa had destroyed that trust. Then Mr. Anderson quietly handed me one more document. Sophia, there's something else you should know. I looked up. What? He sighed. Melissa recently filed paperwork to refinance the house. My eyes widened. So, his expression turned serious. She listed herself as the sole owner. I felt cold, because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was fraud. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. My sister wasn't just hiding the truth. She was trying to erase me completely. That night, I sat alone in my room. And for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't crying. I was angry. Not hateful. Not bitter. Just finished. because my parents had raised me with kindness, but they also taught me something important. Never let people mistake kindness for weakness. And as I stared at Mom's letter one final time, I made a decision. Melissa had hidden the truth for 2 years. But she had no idea that I had just discovered everything, and she definitely wasn't prepared for what I planned to do next. For 2 days, I said nothing. I acted normal. I smiled. I ate dinner with Melissa, and I pretended nothing had changed. But inside, everything had changed, because once trust is broken, you can never see a person the same way again. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking at Melissa as my big sister. I was looking at her as someone who had betrayed me, someone who had stolen from me, someone who had lied while looking me directly in the eyes. But before confronting her, I wanted answers. Not assumptions, not emotions, answers. So with Mr. Anderson's help, I hired a real estate attorney. Within a week, we discovered something unbelievable. Melissa had already begun preparing paperwork to sell the house. Sell the house. Without telling me. Without my signature. Without my knowledge. When my lawyer explained that selling a jointly owned property without the other owner's consent was impossible, I finally understood something. Melissa wasn't planning to share anything. She had planned to keep lying until the very end. And somehow, that hurt more than losing money, because all I wanted was honesty. 3 nights later, Melissa came home excited. "I have great news." I looked up from the couch. "What happened?" She smiled. "I might refinance the house and lower our expenses." Our expenses? I almost laughed, but I remained calm. "Really?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Yes." Then she added, "And don't worry, Sophia. As long as you live here, you'll always have a place." Those words. Those same controlling words. Except this time, I knew the truth. I stood up slowly, and for the first time in 2 years, I stopped pretending. "Actually, Melissa, we need to talk." Her smile disappeared. "About what?" I calmly placed several documents on the dining table. Copies of the will, bank transfers, property records, Mom's letter, and finally, the deed. The moment her eyes landed on the papers, the color disappeared from her face. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, "Where did you get these?" I looked directly at her. "From the lawyer you told me had canceled." Silence. Complete silence. Then came the words I never expected. "I'm sorry." Not tears, not explanations, not regret, just 2 words. "I'm sorry." I stared at her. For what? For lying? For stealing? For keeping Mom's letter? For taking $76,000 from me? Her eyes filled with tears. "Sophia, I didn't mean for things to go this far." I laughed bitterly. 2 years, Melissa? 2 years isn't an accident." Then suddenly, she broke down. Actual tears. And through sobs, she finally confessed. She had been drowning in debt before Mom died. Credit cards, bad investments, personal loans. She was terrified. And after hearing that the house belonged to both of us, she panicked. She convinced herself she'd borrow money temporarily. Then 1 month became 6 months. 6 months became a year. And eventually, the lie became her life. "I was going to tell you." I shook my head. "No, you were going to keep lying." Because people who plan to tell the truth don't hide letters from dead mothers. Then I asked the question that had haunted me for days. "Did you ever love me?" Her face collapsed. "Sophia, of course I love you." I nodded slowly. "Then why did you make me feel like I was nothing?" She started crying harder. And for the first time since our parents died, I saw guilt. Real guilt. But some damage can't be undone with tears. I handed her Mom's letter. "You stole this from me." Melissa looked at the envelope and immediately burst into tears. Because she recognized Mom's handwriting. And for the first time, she looked ashamed. Not because she got caught, because she remembered who she used to be. Over the next several months, lawyers became involved. Melissa agreed to everything. She repaid part of the money. The house was legally divided, and eventually we sold it the day we handed over the keys. We stood in the empty living room where we had grown up. And suddenly, both of us started crying. Because despite everything, this had been home. The house where Dad taught us to ride bicycles. The kitchen where Mom baked Christmas cookies. The staircase where we sat during thunderstorms. Memories don't belong to property. They belong to hearts. Before leaving, Melissa quietly said, "I'm sorry I became someone Mom and Dad would be disappointed in." I looked at her for a long moment, and finally answered, "They wouldn't stop loving you, but they would want you to change." She cried harder, and honestly, so did I. 1 year later, my life looked completely different. With my share of the money and the repayments Melissa made, I purchased my first condo, my first home, my own home, at 31 years old. The same thing Melissa once told me I'd never have. On moving day, Emma stood beside me holding a bottle of champagne, and laughing, she said, "Remember when your sister said you'd never own property?" I smiled. Then I looked around my beautiful new home and answered, "Turns out she was wrong." As for Melissa, rebuilding trust took time. Years, actually. We weren't close anymore, but little by little, she changed. She attended counseling, paid off her debts, and most importantly, she stopped running from the truth. Today, our relationship isn't perfect, but it's honest. And honestly, that's enough. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes, it simply means refusing to let pain control your future. People often ask me what I learned from all this. The answer is simple. Family is precious, but love without boundaries becomes sacrifice, and kindness without wisdom becomes vulnerability. I paid my sister $3,000 2 years, and in the end, I discovered what she was hiding, but I also discovered something else, my own strength, and nobody can take that away from me.